Functional programming is one of the widely used approach, either developing small applications, medium application, or even large applications. So having a good understanding about functional programming and able to write the code in terms of a function will really help you to develop any kind of applications, small, medium, large kind of applications. So as part of that, in this video onwards, in our coming videos, we will be knowing how we can develop the code, Python code in functions. So that will really help you whenever you wanted to develop any kind of applications. So having said that, in this video I will be demonstrating one of the code which is not using in functions and one more code using functions. By that you yourself can able to identify the real use case and the real advantage of using functions. So having said that, let us go ahead and see the difference. So to make you understand the difference, what I will be doing is that I will take one code. Let's say I will take the simple code. By this you can able to understand clearly. So what I am doing is that I will be taking number 1 here, and in this number 1, let's say I am taking 10 here. So in number 2 I am taking 20 here. So now what I will be doing is that I will do sum and product of these two numbers. So for that I will just print the sum and product of these numbers. So I am printing sum here, and the sum that I wanted to calculate is from number 1 and number 2. Num1 plus num2. So after that, what I wanted to do, I wanted to find the product of these numbers. So I am printing, I am telling product, and the product between number 1 and number 2, num1 and num2 here. So this is one piece of code. So here we are taking these two numbers, number 1 and number 2, and after that we are calculating the sum and product of these two numbers, and we are printing that, right? So now we are doing this only with 10 and 20. So now what I wanted to do is that I will similarly do this same process, but the numbers will be differing. So the numbers that I will be taking now is number 1, which is nothing but 100, and number 2 that I wanted to take here is 200. So after that I just wanted to print the sum and product of these two numbers. So in order to save some time, I am taking the same code here and I am pasting here. So this is another piece of code. We are taking 100 and 200 numbers and we are finding the sum and product. So now after here, what I will be doing is that I wanted to take two more numbers. One is 1000 and another number is 2000 here. So I am taking 2000. So I will be doing the same process here. I wanted to find the sum and I wanted to find the product. So now if I execute this, we can able to see the first piece, which is sum between number 1, number 2, 10 and 20, which is 30, and the product is 200. So after that, when we are finding the sum between number 1 and number 2, when we have 100 and 200, we are getting 300, and the product is 20,000. So after that we are finding the sum between 1000 and 2000, we are finding the product also. So by looking at this program, what you are feeling, so we are having the repeated code, right? So here we are having only these unique lines, these 4 unique lines. After that the remaining code are duplicated code, right? So we are reusing the same code again and again. So we are repeating the same code again and again, right? So this is kind of a not so appreciated. So why is that? Because we are repeating the same code. So this is a simple program. Because of that reason, you might be thinking that okay, this is fine, we are just copying and pasting, that works, right? But when we are developing large applications, this kind of approach will not encourage. So when we have so much of code like this, to make you to understand the code, to debug the code, that will become some kind of a problem. So for that we can use functions, and we can reduce this redundant code, and we can reuse the code whenever and how many number of times that we wanted. So let us go ahead and see how we can develop the same code using functions. So we can reduce the same code by using functions. So don't worry about how we are defining the functions for now. In the next video, I will clearly explain how we are defining the function, how we are using the function. So for the time being, come with me. I will explain how we can reduce this code by using functions. So to do that, I will just define a function. So come with me. So to define this function, I will be using this def keyword. So I wanted to find the sum and product, right? So I will be naming sum and product here. So this is the name that I wanted to give to my functions. So here I wanted to take two numbers here. One is number 1, another one is number 2. So these are called parameters. So don't worry about all of these things now. In the next video, I will clearly explain all of these things. So in this function, what I wanted to do, I wanted to find this sum and product. I just wanted to print the sum and product here. So we will be representing this code in the block. So by mentioning this indentation, this will be represented as a block, right? So now this function is got defined. So I will be executing this. So this is got executed. So this function is ready to use. So we can use this function how many number of times that we wanted by passing any number of parameter, any number of values for number 1 and number 2. So now what I will be doing is that I will pass this similar code. I wanted to get this similar code. So for that, what I will be doing is that I will just simply mention this sum product here. So after that, I will be passing 10 and 20. So these are the numbers that we have taken initially, right? So I am passing 10 and 20. After that, I am mentioning sum and product. Now I will be passing 100 and 200. After that, I am mentioning sum and product, and I wanted to pass 1000 and 2000 here. So now 2000. So now if I execute this, you can see we are getting the same result, right? So we are getting some product for 10 and 20, some product for 100 and 200, some product for 1000 and 2000. This is the exact result that what we are getting for this case also, right? For this code also. So the code is same. So I am taking this in two cells, right? Even if I take all of these things in the single cell itself, so I will be removing this cell, and if I execute this, we can able to see the same code, right? So now you can observe these two cells and you yourself can compare. Here we are writing a lot of code here. So we are writing a lot of code, and most of that code is repeated. So here when we are using these functions, we are reusing this code again. So only once we are using this particular function to define whatever the things that we wanted to do in this function. After that, we are calling this function how many number of times that we wanted. So here we are calling only 3 times. We can call any number of times that we wanted. So let's say if I call by using 1 and 2, or so someone product, I am calling 1 and 2, and if I call with, let's say, 5 and 10 here, if I execute this, still you can see some more results coming here. Sum and product of 1 and 2, sum and product of 3 and 5 and 10. Like this, we can call this function and we can reuse this same code how many number of times that we wanted in the code. So by using this non-functional approach, we need to write the code again and again. If you wanted to find the sum and product for 1 and 2, we again need to define these variables and we again need to print these statements. So like that, we need to do how many number of times that we wanted and having the repeated code when we don't use functions. So by simply using these functions and by simply mention whatever we wanted in the functions, we can able to reduce the code and we can able to reuse the code. So two things, one is reducing of the code, another one is reusing of the code. So apart from this, there are so many applications, there's so many advantages using functions. Let us know one after the other each advantage that we have when we use functions by taking one more example. There are many advantages of using functions in the program. So these are some of the most important advantages that we have in order to use when we use functions. So let us go ahead and understand each of these advantages of using functions. So to understand this more clearly, I have taken one more example here. So here what we are doing is that we are creating a bank account management system. So consider this as a bank account management system. So here we are having different options to create an account, to deposit money, to withdraw money, to check the balance. We are having all of these options here. So all of these options here are developing using non-functional programming. So we need to write code everything in here. So when we when the choice is one, when user wants to create a new account, so we will be doing all of this process in here. When user wanted to deposit money, we will be mentioning all of this process in here. When user want to withdraw money, we will be mentioning all of these things here. And when user wants to check the balance, we will be mentioning all of these things in here. But the problem is that when this applications grows bigger and when we wanted to debug and understand what exactly happening, that becomes very problem. So here I am using with functions. So we are developing all of these things using functions here. So the same bank account management systems we are developing using functions. So this is modular. So let us go ahead and real applications and advantages of using functions. So I have listed some of the most important advantages. Let us go one after the other. So first advantage that we have, which is nothing but modularity. So what this modularity means is that when we have large applications, when we wanted to develop large applications, by simply going this approach, by doing all of the code in the single file or in the single approach, that is not so appreciated. So what we can do is that we can divide the large applications, we can divide the large work that we wanted to do into chunks and pieces of code, and then by combining all of those code, we can able to get the same result. Here what we are doing is that when we are not using the functions, we are doing all of these things in the single code itself. So for this program, you might be thinking that this works, but when it comes to reality, this doesn't work. So in this case, we will be having so much of things while opening an account. While deposit some money, we will be having so much of process. While withdrawing some money, we will be having so much of process. So when something goes wrong, it will become very problem. So while defining the functions, so we are dividing the problem, we are dividing the whole process of bank account management systems into functions. One is opening an account, another one is depositing money, and another one is withdrawing money, and another one is checking balance. By dividing the whole process into chunks and pieces of codes, by dividing those into functions, we can actually do this process more effectively. Let's say there are 4 employees in the organizations. So when we have this kind of approach, when we don't use functions, this will become some kind of a problem. But by dividing the whole problem into pieces and functions, each employee can develop one piece here. One employee can develop opening an account, another employee can develop depositing money. So like that, each employee can work on the specific function and develop the specific functionality. So I hope you can able to understand this modularity, which means dividing the large applications into small pieces of applications and developing those applications by functions and combining all of them to get the original product. So I hope you can able to understand the modularity, right? So next, the one that we have, which is nothing but reusability. So previously we have seen in this example also, we are writing the same code again and again, right? So by using these functions, we can reuse the code whenever and wherever that we wanted. So here we are developing the sum product here. By this sum product, we can use whenever and wherever we wanted. So in this example, let's say if I wanted to check the balance, so that will become problem more number of times. Let's say before depositing, after depositing, before withdrawing, after withdrawing of money, I wanted to check the balance. That will become some kind of a problem when we don't have the program in the functions. But whereas when we have the program in terms of a functions, we can reuse the code whenever and how many number of times that we wanted. So that is one of the most important thing while using functions, reusability of the code. So I hope you can able to understand how we can reuse the code. So in the coming videos, we will be knowing and understanding more clearly about all these statements also. So one more important advantage that we have, which is nothing but readability, which means when we have all the code in the single block itself, this becomes some kind of a problem in order to read and in order to understand. Let's say all of this program I have developed, let's say I am leaving the company and someone else is coming, and when they check this code, they may don't understand what this code is saying. They may don't understand why this code is developed. But when we divide the whole process into functions, they can easily understand, okay, this function is responsible for opening an account. So if anything goes wrong, we can directly come to here and check the thing. And if you wanted to understand all of these functions, they can simply set some time and set some time for understanding one function, some other time for understanding depositing money. Like that they can understand one after the other instead of directly going through all the code, right? So I hope you can able to understand the reusability and the readability. So user can able to, anyone can able to read the code and understand the code effectively when we are using functions. So one more thing that we have, which is nothing but maintainability. As I have previously mentioned, when something goes wrong, by having so much of things like this, that becomes really a problem. So here we will be using variables, right? Variables defining for some process, the same variables might be using for some other process also. So in such case, if something goes wrong, we don't know where exactly the problem is present. So by having these functions, so every code, the code present in this function open account is isolated, is only used for this open account, that doesn't affect any other functions. So by don't having the functions, if anything goes wrong in any one of the pieces, that affects entire code here. In such case, debugging and solving the problem will really a problem. So by having the functions, we can isolate the code. So anything goes wrong in any one of the piece here, let's say something goes wrong in depositing money, so we can directly come to this deposit money here, and we can able to check what exactly the wrong happened in the deposit money. So I hope you can able to understand the maintainability. We can effectively maintain the code when we have functions. So apart from that, one more thing that we have, which is nothing but abstraction here. So here, if you carefully consider here, when once we have defined and when once we have write the code about this function, we don't have to check this code again and again. So we know how this function works and what is the use of this function. So we don't need to check this code again and again. We can directly call this function and do whatever the process that we wanted to do in order to get the function. So when we don't use this functions approach, we will be going through all the code and we will be understanding, if I want something, what I need to do. So if user wants to check the balance, so what is one more thing that he wanted to do? If user wants to withdraw some money, he wanted to first check the balance. So if the balance is present, the amount that he was wanted to withdraw, he need to first check the balance. If the balance is present as he wanted to withdraw money, then only he can able to withdraw, right? So like that, there are a lot of things that user wants to check, and when everything needs to be executed, when everything present in a single code itself, that becomes a problem. But when we have everything in a modular approach, we can use that code and we can maintain and we can abstract, right? So we don't need to check the code what happening inside of this particular check balance. We can directly call that check balance and get the balance. So like that, we can able to achieve the abstraction, which is nothing but hiding the code and hiding the implementation and only knowing what we wanted to know. So we know that when we call this check balance, we can be able to get the balance. So we don't wanted to know what is internally happening in the check balance. So that is one of the important advantage that we have when we are using functions, which is nothing but abstraction. So one more thing that we have, which is nothing but scalability. So here we are only having four options here: opening an account, depositing some money, and withdrawing some money, checking the balance. Let's say we wanted to grow this and we wanted to give more options to the user. In such case, writing everything in a single code itself becomes a really problem. So if one more function, one more options need to be added, in such case the program need to be evaluated, and we need to check if I include one more option, if there is anything that goes wrong, any one of the existing function goes wrong. So that is not the case while having the functions. So we can add, we can scale, and how many number of functions that we wanted to add, how many number of options that we wanted to give to the user. So by having these functions, let's say if you wanted to add one more option to the user, we can directly come to this program and add one more function. So one option equal to one function. Like that, we can able to define and we can able to write the code effectively and use the code and reuse the code whenever and wherever we wanted. I hope you can able to understand this scalability, which means whenever we wanted to increase more number of functions, we can directly increase them. That is not possible and that is not appreciated with non-functional approach. So I hope you can able to understand all of these applications and all of these advantages of using functions over non-functional programming. I hope you can able to understand that. So that's it for this video, and I hope you can able to understand the difference and importance of using functions to have a modularity of the code and reusing of the existing code more number of times, and readability of the code, maintainability of the code, abstraction and scalability of the code. So I hope you can able to understand all of these concepts explained in this video. So these are the main and important aspect that we need to consider whenever we are writing code. So when we want to write some code, either we need to go for functions or we need to go for direct approach to writing everything in the single file. So it is better to go for functions by having all of these advantages. So I hope you can able to understand, right? So that's it for this video. In the next video I will explain how we can create the function and how we can use the function. Here in this case we have seen how we can create and use, right? So there are some more approaches, there are so many things we need to do and understand while having a good understanding about functions creation and effective usage of the functions. So that we will know in our next video. To stay updated with my latest videos, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications to all so that whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. I hope you have found this video interesting. If that is true, hit the like button. See you in the next one.